When power goes unchecked. When power goes unchecked for too long, it only takes a single mistake to bring everything crashing down. It started like any other shift for Officer Matthew Langston. Another scorching afternoon in Jackson, Mississippi. Another routine patrol down Booker T. Wilson Avenue. The sun hung high, merciless, heat shimmering off the asphalt in waves as Langston took a slow sip of lukewarm coffee from a plastic gas station cup. His cruiser hummed steadily beneath him, and his mind drifted toward the weekend ahead, fishing plans with his brother, maybe a barbecue. It was supposed to be just another ordinary day. Then he saw it. A black 2015 Chrysler 300 eased through an intersection as the traffic light flickered from yellow to red. In Langston's eyes, it was a beat too late. His hand moved on instinct, flipping on his lights. A sharp whoop of the siren cut through the humid air. The Chrysler's driver responded without hesitation, signaling and pulling smoothly to the curb. No panic. No sudden movements. Langston frowned. He adjusted his belt and stepped out, adopting the steady, confident gait he'd perfected over his 10-year career. This was routine. Just another stop. But as he approached the driver's window, something about the man inside struck him as off. The driver was an older black man. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Clean-shaven. Sharp eyes that watched Langston's every move with a calm precision. He wore a neatly pressed, short-sleeved shirt and sat with an upright posture that seemed almost deliberate, as if he were making a point. Langston didn't like it. License and registration, Langston said, his voice firm but professional. The man didn't immediately reach for his papers. Instead, he glanced up, meeting Langston's gaze without fear or uncertainty. "May I ask why I was pulled over, officer?" the man asked, his tone measured, respectful, but direct. Langston inhaled slowly through his nose. He hated when they asked. Hated when they didn't just do what they were told. "You ran a red light," Langston replied flatly. The man's eyebrows lifted slightly. He glanced at the intersection in his side mirror before returning his eyes to Langston. "The light was yellow when I crossed," he said evenly. "I'm certain of it." Langston's jaw clenched. His cruiser didn't have a dash cam, and his body cam had only kicked on moments ago. There was no hard evidence. But out here, his word was the law. "License and registration," Langston repeated, his patience thinning. This time, the man nodded. Calmly, he reached into the glove compartment and retrieved his documents. He handed them over without a word. Langston studied the driver's license. The name, Charles Everett, didn't ring a bell. But something about the way Everett moved, deliberate, practiced, unshaken, made Langston uneasy. This man wasn't scared. That bothered him. "Step out of the vehicle," Langston ordered. Everett's brow furrowed slightly. "May I ask why?" Langston felt his pulse quicken. "Because I said so." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for Langston to sense a shift in the air. Everett's gaze held his for a beat longer than most men dared. Then, slowly, he sighed. Not in resignation, not in fear, but as if he understood something Langston didn't. "All right," Everett said quietly. He opened the door and stepped out with controlled precision, unfolding himself from the car with the grace of someone who'd done this before. Langston gestured toward the trunk. "Hands on the vehicle." Everett complied. Langston began patting him down, but halfway through, he heard Everett murmur under his breath, "This is unnecessary." Langston's jaw tightened. "Excuse me. You have my license," Everett said. "You've run my plates. You know I'm clean." Langston didn't respond. He finished the search, but something inside him snapped. Without warning, he reached for his cuffs. "What are you doing?" Everett asked, his voice still calm. "Turn around," Langston ordered. "For what?" Everett asked again. Langston's grip on his arm tightened. "I said turn around." But Everett didn't move. And that's when Langston made the worst decision of his career. He grabbed Everett's wrist and tried to twist it behind his back. The air changed instantly. Before Langston could lock on the cuffs, Everett pivoted. Fast. Controlled. Suddenly Langston wasn't holding the wrist of an older man. He was gripping someone who knew exactly how to break a hold. For the first time that day, Officer Matthew Langston felt doubt. He didn't let go. He couldn't. But in that split second of silence, he realized something was going very, very wrong. "I said turn around," Langston barked, yanking Everett's arm harder. Everett exhaled slowly through his nose. His voice, when it came, was still calm, still measured. "Officer," he said, "I strongly suggest you think carefully about what you're doing." Langston's face burned. He wasn't about to be challenged by someone who thought they knew better. "Think carefully?" Langston sneered. "You're refusing to comply. That's resisting." Everett's eyes stayed locked on his. I'm not resisting. I'm questioning an unlawful detention. Langston didn't care. His pride was stung, his authority questioned. He forced Everett's arm behind his back and slammed him against the trunk. Everett grunted as Langston's forearm pressed between his shoulder blades. The cuffs snapped closed with a metallic click. You're under arrest, Langston said. For what? Everett asked. His voice, maddeningly, remained calm. Langston hesitated. He hadn't thought that far ahead. Obstruction, he blurted. Interfering with an officer's investigation. Everett let out a slow breath. Not in fear. In disappointment. Langston wasn't used to that reaction. Most people begged. Some shouted. Others broke down. But Everett? He just shook his head, as if he had expected this all along. Langston grabbed the radio on his shoulder. Dispatch, this is Officer Langston. I have a male suspect in custody. Requesting transport. A crackle. 10-4. What's the charge? Langston opened his mouth. Before he could speak, Everett did. This is a mistake, officer, he said. And it's one you're going to regret. Langston snorted. Is that so? Everett didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten. He just looked at Langston with a certainty that sent a cold shiver down the officer's spine. You don't know who I am, Everett said. Langston scoffed. Should I? Everett didn't answer. He leaned back against the squad car, as calm as if he were sitting in his own living room. Langston shoved him toward the cruiser, a little harder than necessary. He stuffed Everett into the back seat and slammed the door, the clunk louder than usual in the heavy afternoon air. He sat behind his desk an hour later, scrolling through his phone as he waited for Everett to be processed. It was just another arrest. No big deal. Until Sergeant David Harlan's voice echoed across the station. Langston. My office. Now. Langston's head snapped up. Harlan was already standing by his desk, phone in hand, face red with fury. You mind telling me, Harlan growled, why we have a U.S. Army colonel in our holding cell? Langston blinked. What? Colonel Charles Everett, Harlan said, slamming the phone onto his desk. 32 years in the Army. 2 tours overseas. Security clearance up to his eyeballs. And a direct line to the Secretary of Defense. Langston's blood ran cold. I didn't know. No, you didn't, Harlan snapped. Because you didn't check his ID before throwing your weight around. Langston opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. You realize what you've done? Harlan asked, his voice low and dangerous. You cuffed a man who's had more authority in his pinky finger than you'll ever have in your whole career. Harlan gestured toward the station floor. Langston turned and saw them, federal agents in dark suits, standing like statues. Phones ringing. Officers whispering in tight knots. This is not going away, Harlan said. We've already had 3 calls from the Pentagon. Langston clenched his fists. He wasn't cooperating. He knew his rights, Harlan barked. And you didn't like it. Langston's chest heaved. So what now? We just let him go. Harlan laughed bitterly. Oh, we're letting him go. But we're not stopping there. He shoved a folder into Langston's chest. What's this? Langston asked. An internal review, Harlan said. We're going through every stop you've made in the last year. And you better pray this was a one-time screw-up. Langston turned to leave. Don't even think about fighting this, Harlan warned. But Langston already knew. The damage was done. Everett sat calmly in the holding cell. He'd made 1 phone call. That was all it took. Now, the system Langston had trusted for so long was working against him. When the door buzzed open, Everett stood. 3 men in dark suits approached. Colonel Everett, the lead agent said. You're free to go. Everett nodded. That was quick. You know how it works, the agent replied. Everett did. As he left, he glanced across the squad room. Langston stood there, pale and still, clutching a folder as though it might save him. Everett said nothing. He didn't have to. Langston barely made it through the shift. By the time he reached his locker, his hands were still shaking. Then he checked his phone. The body cam footage was everywhere. News reports. Social media. Even the department's own website had a statement. The video of Langston arresting Everett had gone viral. And the comments? Brutal. Another badge-heavy cop. Another disgrace. Calls for his firing. Politicians weighing in. Military officials demanding accountability. Langston felt his breath quicken. An email popped up. Mandatory internal review. Immediate compliance required. The next week was a nightmare. Elena Martinez, an investigator from Internal Affairs, sat across from Langston in a drab room. You've got 10 years on the force, she said. That's a lot of stops to look at. It was a lawful arrest, Langston insisted. Martinez raised an eyebrow. 80% of your stops were black men, she said. But you issued citations mostly to white drivers. Care to explain? Langston said nothing. This isn't an isolated incident, Martinez continued. This is a pattern. Days later, Langston was suspended without pay, pending termination review. He watched the news as Colonel Everett stood before a sea of cameras. I don't want revenge, Everett said. I want accountability. Langston scoffed. But deep down, he knew. He'd already lost. 2 days later, his resignation was public. And it was only the beginning. Everett's case sparked reform. New oversight policies. Mandatory bias training. Civil rights groups pushing for more. Langston sat in his apartment, staring at a badge he no longer wore. His shield was gone. His power was gone. And for the first time, he understood. Unchecked power always falls. And when it does, the badge won't save you.